What happens in Vegas? Does it actually stay in Vegas? Never really tells, does it? And it definitely won't for these T100 athletes. The grand final is just around the corner, and there's some important points on offer and great opportunities for the athletes who are actually racing it. That's what we're gonna dive into today, all about that race. So excited to head out there. But we've also got the World Triathlon Grand Final taking place. What a weekend right before Kona. I love this time of the year. Thanks so much for joining me for the Triathlon Weekly News Roundup. Let's get into it. But actually, before we do, I've got a very special guest to introduce you to. He's actually going to be joining me on quite a few videos coming up, and hopefully we'll become training partners in years to come. So yeah, everybody, meet Marty. He is the new puppy joining the family. He's going to be a good triathlete, I think, but we'll see. He's pretty good at eating and sleeping, so he's got those two things down. But there we go. All right, with that out the way, we can talk about Vegas, and I'm super excited for this one for three main reasons. First of all, the course looks extremely tough. A lot of elevation on the bike and like 1,200 feet on the run. That is gonna be something new. It's gonna take a very strong runner on this course. 50% of the field are wildcards on both the men's and the women's side, if I've got my numbers right. It seems to be changing every time I checked. Lots of big names pulled out. We'll talk about that in a second, which gives a ton of opportunity for newcomers. I think especially on the men's side, we could see some surprise results here. I'm looking at the likes of Justus Nieschlag, Henry Schumann. And the third main reason is this is the final race, and it's gonna show us what the standings are like heading into the grand final, who the favorites are. I mean, I think it's pretty clear right now. It's Martin Van Riel and Taylor Knibb, but you never know what can happen in this last race. If they have some misfortune, it's gonna be wide open. But looking at it a little bit closer, first of all, the big news is that Kyle Smith is one of those who's pulled out of this one. That pretty much knocks him out of the running to win this whole thing. He's going to be stuck on these points, and if Martin Van Riel wins and has 105 points going into it, or if Yuri Kula wins and has 91 points going into it, Sam Long 92 points, that is quite a deficit to try and overcome, although you never know what can happen. Other two names not racing, Sam Laidlow, Magnus Ditlev, they're in Kona, and they got really unlucky with PTO taking a race off the calendar because now they're stuck with their scores as well, even though they could have added one more if there was that one more race. So they'll have a massive deficit going into the grand final. And on the women's side, Ashley Gentle has pulled out of the race, which means she'll be stuck at 92 points going into it. 92 points to 105 if Taylor wins pretty much means Taylor gets a whole position advantage going into the grand final. If India Lee picks up a second place here and say Taylor gets first, she'll be at 88 points versus Taylor's 105. Those two though, Ashley Gentle and India Lee, no matter if they're even out of contention for the win, will be pretty happy that the likes of Kat Matthews and Imogen Simmons aren't racing. They've pulled out as well. Kat, I think, will be gutted that she raced Ibiza and not Vegas. She risked it in Ibiza right after the Nice World Champs, didn't get many points at all, and now she's stuck on her score going into the grand final. Yeah, you'd have to imagine she would have wished she would have raced here in Vegas because the prize money for the bonus pool is so substantial. I mean, it could be the difference between $50,000 in one position. But remember, it's worth a lot more points than anything can happen. Others not racing on the women's field, which will be a huge bummer for them. Lucy Charles Barkley, she'll be stuck on 2 races going into the grand final. She was T100 star for this whole series, and now she didn't even get to race Nice, and now she won't even get to compete for the T100 series. Chelsea Sodaro, she's going to be stuck on 1 score going into the grand final because she's pulled out. But some good news is that Laura Philipp, the defending Ironman world champion, will be racing, and a good result here could put her in a fantastic position. I actually loved a recent podcast that I listened to of her with Mike Riley. You gotta go check it out. She's such a wonderful speaker, and she looks like she came around pretty good after Nice, after all the chaos, of course, but yeah, got back into it with some track sessions already, and with all the climbing and the hard run, she's going to be one to watch at this one. So on to my picks. Of course, I've got to back my man Yuri again here, but I think I said it in a previous video where his run was just so insane at Ibiza that if he gets that front pack swim and manages to stay with the group on the bike, this could be his race. But Martin says he hasn't been challenged to his full potential yet, not even against Sam Laidlow. So there's still room to go for him. I think Alistair Brownlee showed us in Ibiza that he is ready for a podium. If he didn't get that penalty, he could have taken that position. And he said he was actually annoyed with himself because he felt so good after he finished the run. He had a lot more left in the tank. So he's learning pacing and he's growing throughout the season. I'm excited to watch Alistair Brownlee. And then on the women's side, of course, picking Taylor Knibb with such a tough course here. Hopefully we see India Lee move from strength to strength here. I'm really excited to watch Laura and Haug hopefully is back with some pace in her legs after Nice. But I want to see how Flora Duffy and Taylor come along since Ibiza. A few more weeks in the TT bike can make a huge difference. We've seen that before. So yeah, keeping my eye out on them. But sticking with T100 for a bit before we move on, they announced a 12-year partnership with World Triathlon, which I think is really exciting. I've seen some people downplay it quite a bit, but you know, it's good to see this partnership grow. It looks like they're going to be collaborating more commercially, including the likes of the broadcast. So I'm excited to see if something happens between those two. But hopefully for me, this means that we'll have WTCS races, World Triathlon short course races on the same weekend as PTO races, because we really need a lot more people at these events. And when we have seen a ton of people at them, like the London T100, it's just made it that much more spectacular. But like I said, I'm heading out there. I'm racing myself, a bit nervous. First big race of the year. I raced the 100K distance before at the Canadian Open, and it's like deceptively hard. It's just as hard, I think, as a 70.3. The swim is just a little bit longer. Glad the run will be a little bit shorter. That's taken a while to come around for me. But yeah, I'll be on this bike behind me. You've heard me talk about them before, I'm sure. The A2 bikes, a small bike brand out of Portland, Oregon that I just absolutely adore. They are such a nice team that if you're looking for a new tri bike, I couldn't recommend checking them out. Reach out to them on their website or on social media. They will help you out make your dream bike, and they really did with mine. And yeah, just proud to partner with a brand like them who supports the next up and coming generation of athletes with USA Triathlon. And yeah, couldn't say more about them. Moving on then to World Triathlon and the grand final. Oh, this one gets me excited. The last 2 years of grand finals that I've watched have been dramatic, to say the least. Two of my favorite races in the entire calendar of the last 2 years, because the likes of Hayden Wilde and Alex Yee have had their titles snatched from them in dramatic fashion, sprint finishes. All these athletes put everything on the line, and with this being the Olympic year, we don't know what a lot of these athletes are going to do afterwards. So this is the best time to tune in and watch one, because this could be the last hurrah for a lot of them, like the likes of Vincent Louis, who will be racing here. But yeah, stacked star list. Alex Yee again is the huge favorite going into it. He looks unstoppable, especially after Way High. On the women's side, Cassandra Beaugrand is definitely the favorite, but on both sides, it's still really all up for grabs. And watching a video about Leo Verger, he looks like he's willing to try and make a Hail Mary at this race and try and snag it again from Alex. Melissa Tersch, her performance in Way High was insane. I could see her taking the win here. Cassandra just has to finish in third or worse, and she'll win the world title at such a young age. Beth Potter could also, if she wins, she will win the world title again, try and go back to back. But there's a host of other names who could be the grand final champions, might not win the overall World Series. Like some Morgan Pearson for me, he's always such a dark horse for this run. And on the women's side, Georgia Taylor Brown is on fire right now in the Super League Series. So yeah, tune in for that one Saturday and Sunday. Picks over there. Going for Alex to defend. He will do the double of the Olympics and become world champion, which not many people have done before. But I picked the upset to happen on the women's side, where Elisa Tersch is just on fire right now, and I hope she pulls it off. But we can move on to the headlines now, and this was an awesome one by Kevin McKinnon, Triathlon Magazine Canada, where he noticed that Olav Aleksander has signed to become head coach of Uno X cycling team. They're a relatively new pro cycling team that's Scandinavian based. And with that, he joins the likes of Dan Lorang, who's coaching Bora Hansgrohe and will be coaching a Tour de France team. They've had some success, but they are still growing. So I think it's a perfect spot for him to make his influence known. They've obviously seen what he's done with Christian and Gustav. By the sounds of that article, it looks like he'll still continue to coach them as well, but You never know. He said he isn't going to try and revolutionize everything at first. He said he'll start by understanding how things work within the team, but then rather fine-tune what's already working well. But if we know Olav Aleksander, I think he's going to make some big changes. There's no way, with everything he knows after working with Christian and Gustav, that there aren't some big changes he can make, but that's just me speculating. Super interesting, after Christian wasn't going to be racing in the Tour, maybe this will be an easy in for him if he changes his mind. Tri247 got a chance to interview Olav Aleksander, and they asked him about Christian not racing the Tour in LA 2028, and they unveiled one of the main reasons why Christian also didn't make the move to the Tour. He said there was too large a gap in payment. He said the disadvantage of being the world's best triathlete. So I really didn't think that was the case. I thought cycling would be much more lucrative for him. But yeah, I guess as the #1 triathlete in the world versus whatever he would be in the pro cycling field, not worth the change. He also explained in that article, he said, we'll have to come back to this later, but if LA becomes realistic, it means transitioning earlier with more short course racing. Remember, they weren't able to have a long run up into the Paris Olympic Games. He said, however, with the development we've seen around tactics, speaking of short course racing, involving dedicated domestiques, which we saw the likes of Sam Dickinson and Alex Yee and Dylan McCullough and Hayden Wild, it has become a less interesting sport from an individual level and more a team sport. That is fascinating to hear. So yeah, it doesn't look like LA 2028 is set for Christian, and with him racing Kona, we'll have to see what he does next. And then the last bit of headlines coming out, Javier Gomez has been appointed coach for the Spanish Federation, so he will be helping the next generation of athletes there, as alongside Mario Mola, who is appointed the technical advisor. So one of Gomez's long competitors from short course, they'll be working together, yeah, to make the new Mario Mola and Javier Gomez. I think that's amazing, and can't wait to see who they develop in the future. And then finally, another big headline from Chris McCormack and Tri247, which I think is perfect timing around Kona, and especially with a couple of videos I released, I've seen a lot of you comment about the splitting up of Kona and Nice, and I wanted to revisit that with what Chris McCormack said, where he said, it doesn't work for me with the men and women racing on different courses. He said men and women should be on the same day, same course, same world championship. Splitting men and women is a debacle. Fast forward a little bit, he said the sport's gone backwards 20 years, maybe more. He said the sport was better 20 years ago than it is right now. I think it's broken, I think it's bad, and I think they've missed the dynamic and I guess the soul of what triathlon and Kona means to the sport. Wow, he always has some huge things to say, but that's big. And I wanted to ask those of you the hot question. Some of you have been around the sport a lot longer than I. What do you think? Do you think it's worse off than when you were watching it 20 years ago? That seems crazy to me with everything we've got going on. It's definitely better than ever since I started watching it. So yeah, let me know how it was back then. Can it compare? Is it this bad? I also saw Mark Allen commenting how it's going to be a bit of a testosterone fest in Kona. I went to the women's only world champs last year. I'm going to the men's only one this year, and I'll be able to tell you what it's like and is it really that different. But yeah, please do chime in on that down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll report back from Vegas and Kona next. See you in the next one. Have a good one.